Human Rights Commission sponsors and presents a variety of different events during the course of the year, and one of the ones that we focus on is International Human Rights Day, which is celebrated around the world on December 10th. And this is an opportunity for people around the community, both within city government and also different community groups, to come together and share what they're doing with regard to human rights implementation. We have people speak, we have entertainment from various community organizations, we have tabling. The tabling is interesting because community groups relate what they're doing in terms of their mission, their goals and activities to provisions of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. So this is one of the things that we do to raise awareness in the community, to reinforce the values of the Universal Declaration, and to remind people that they have these rights and that these rights are really important.
Well, I do think that we believe, and I believe really strongly, that human rights do begin at home, and that means that every level of government has to be respectful of human rights, support human rights, and protect human rights, and particularly the local level of government. Universal Declaration, it really talks about everything from people having access to food, to shelter, to being treated the same as everybody else. These human rights aren't just about slurs and terrible things that people do to each other. They're about how we live in our community every day, how we make sure that people have their basic needs met. We certainly have to be sure that justice is served out to everyone, but there's a quality of life and a livability. That's what the Human Rights Declaration is really all about.
It has always been a high value of ours at the police department to protect our community from violations of constitutional rights and human rights. Now there's limits to what we can do in protecting human rights because not all of those violations are crimes, and we are restricted to only investigate violations of the law, criminal law. The recent implementation of the civilian oversight system has brought clarity to not only the communities but our interest in ensuring that our officers are experts in constitutional law and use of force, in our awareness of the implications and the effects of some mental health conditions that people have in our community. The police department has a critical role in the city's response to hate crimes. It is a great value of ours to protect the human and constitutional rights of all people in Eugene. And there are few crimes as ugly as those based on hate and bias. So the police department staff and other city staff have worked together to develop protocols to ensure effective investigation of these crimes and the proper communication to the appropriate people when these crimes occur and who's been victimized by them. The improved communication we have ensures that the city's leadership, which includes the mayor and city council and city manager and others, are aware when a crime has occurred so that due care can be given to the person who's involved in an appropriate and sensitive way, but also so that city leaders are familiar with the trends that are occurring in our community and know when it would be right to take action to help to raise the awareness in community about things that we could do differently.
The City of Eugene has benefited for over 40 years from a robust Human Rights Commission and its spin-off projects, immersing our community in international human rights standards for several decades. The community also has a very strong community coalition for the advancement of human rights. Recently, Eugene City Government has also developed a 5-year diversity and equity strategic plan with a human rights framework as one of its main infrastructural elements. Some outcomes of the plan, of the Diversity and Equity Strategic Plan, will be increased training on and reporting of human rights standards, as well as considering social equity issues in all programming and policies. The city created a City Staffed Equity and Human Rights Board, which will work closely on projects and policies with the Human Rights Commission and the Community Coalition. Some of the first couple of collaborative projects that have emerged were the creation of a bias and hate incident response plan, an annual public forum on the state of equity and human rights in Eugene. And recently, the community put on a very successful Human Rights Summit, a collaborative project between the city, the Human Rights Commission, the Equity and Human Rights Board, and the Community Coalition. And over 200 people attended, over 50 partners were represented, and a lot of amazing outcomes came out of that summit.
You know, racial discrimination is something that I live with on a daily basis, because either people are reacting to me because they are fundamentally not happy that I'm here, or they don't know why I'm here. And so that's an opportunity to educate and have a conversation about how they're feeling. There are groups that don't care. You know, they're going to be racist, and they're going to be harmful, and I do have some level of fear for them. Human rights are very important to a nation that is as big and as powerful and as affluent as this country is, because it levels the playing field for all. Human rights is guaranteed to us in our Constitution. Human rights, as I said earlier, levels the playing field. You have certain inalienable rights that are yours, and yes, it's taken many different stages in this country to be able to get there. It's the right to vote was first. The right to have African Americans be able to vote. The right for women to vote. I mean, those are all the part of the rights that we have that are guaranteed to us. And if you find yourself being labeled as an illegal person, or there are no illegal humans, and yet you have the atmosphere and the community that right now that labels you just by your appearance, whether you're homeless, whether you're gay, or whether you are from another culture, especially Hispanic.
So the City of Eugene as an organization, we've done actually equity and human rights and diversity work for a very long time. What we've been able to do in the last few years is really make it more transparent in the organization. We've also revised our traditional diversity committees into the Equity and Human Rights Board, which is made up of representatives from all of the departments across the city. And it's a collective effort to identify how we implement the diversity and equity strategic plan in the organization, and also just generally integrate those concepts into our work. Along with that is the opportunity to use training to help educate our employees more around equity and human rights, how we bring that into our work, how it's part of our leadership programs, how it's part of our daily work. And so a lot of our development is currently focused that direction. We talk more and more when we do trainings in the organizations of how do we get community members involved, how do we bring voices in, how do we hear from voices that aren't traditionally heard from in the community. And so that's one of the challenges, the questions that are being asked on a daily basis as we're doing our work.
My name is Mary Otten, and I've been a resident of Eugene for about 7.5 years. I've been active with the Human Rights Commission's Accessibility Committee, and also served on the commission itself for a while as a commissioner. My focus around human rights has been regarding the rights of people with disabilities. And of course, the interesting thing about that is it cuts across all the different other elements of human rights, because you can be of any race, any age, any sexual orientation. You can be homeless and have a disability, so we're everywhere. Specifically, the Accessibility Committee has been able to accomplish some things in partnership with various city offices and departments. We were able to get the city to install quite a number of accessible pedestrian signals, which enable people with visual impairments and also help people with some cognitive impairments to determine when the walk signal is on, so it's safer to cross the street. one of our members on the committee has worked closely with the Public Works Department to ensure that when the city does pavement preservation and restoration projects, they also keep in mind the needs of people who use wheelchairs and other mobility devices, so that ramps are done properly and so that people aren't led right out into the middle of the street where they might be hit by a car. And we've also had a hard of hearing member on our committee, who has worked with the city to raise consciousness about the needs of the hard of hearing for listening devices at various public meeting spaces and also recreation places like the Holt Center, so that the hard of hearing can enjoy life in Eugene.
The issues faced by a blind person are different than the issues faced by a deaf person, and the issues faced by a mobility challenged person are different. All very different. The commonality is that they're challenges. Accessibility, common, they're different, misperceptions from the public, and we can share that. But I think what's important is, what is the unique part of being blind, the unique part of being deaf, the unique part of being mobility challenged. And that's why I think we should get together and just understand each other. When you think about it, access to information, access to physical issues, like going to the second floor of a building, or an announcement, access to that. You know, we all have a right to that information, no matter who we are, no matter what language we speak, no matter how much we could hear or not. And so when that human right gets ignored or not satisfied, then it becomes a human right issue, you know.
One of the big projects that we did a few years ago was working with homeless service providers in the community to make sure that even our most vulnerable citizens, people that are currently living without homes, would still be able to get a Eugene library card. Since our card is based on residence in the city, we worked with our homeless service provider partners to identify Eugene residents, even though they were homeless. And those that go through that process have their own library card and access to everything in exactly the same conditions and rules as everybody else. So it's been a great program for getting access for everybody. They've found that if up until 3rd grade, kids are learning to read. From 3rd grade on, you read to learn. And if you don't have reading skills developed at 3rd grade level, that's one of the strongest indicators that you will likely have real challenges in life, perhaps be incarcerated. I mean, they can use reading levels at 3rd grade to predict how many jail beds they'll need 20 years later. And so we feel we have an incredible mission to help the kids of Eugene avoid that alternative fate.
I think it's not possible to have a sustainable community without addressing human rights head on. I mean, as I mentioned, it is a key tenet of sustainability that we're looking at social equity concerns. But frankly, if you have a community where there are human rights violations and concern and upset and agitation around those kinds of issues, you don't have the moral momentum to move forward with sustainable development if you're caught up in these more fundamental questions. And I think I think Eugene is well positioned to move forward on this because they have addressed a lot of the fundamental questions around human rights. There's a great deal of sensitivity in this community around that, and that provides an excellent platform for moving forward with sustainable development. If we have that kind of community-wide concern and protectiveness around human rights, just serves as an excellent platform for us to move forward. You know, human rights come into play with sustainability and thinking about what our rights are as human beings on this planet. And I think those get to some pretty fundamental rights around rights to live a healthy, prosperous life, the right to basic services around things like energy, housing, sanitation, transportation. I think sustainability also addresses basic human rights through the idea of social equity and having equal access to all the benefits of sustainable development. So I think it touches on basic human rights in many, many ways, and particularly the basic human right of providing a decent life for your children in the next generation and beyond. I think that, you know, that's such an important part of sustainability, is that we're looking toward the future to guarantee that what we carry on, what we give as a legacy to our kids and to our grandkids is meets their basic needs and addresses basic human rights as well.
The Human Rights Commission, besides encouraging city government to implement human rights here at the local level, is also very excited about the ways in which various community groups are framing the work that they're doing in human rights terms. So what we're seeing in the community is the growth of interest in using human rights and using human rights as a framework to talk about problems as varied as environmental threats, homelessness, immigrant rights, and treatment of mental health.
Most recently, we just began our West Eugene Environmental Health Project, which deals with problems with air pollution in the industrial corridor of West Eugene. It's a grant funded by the Environmental Protection Agency, and we are in collaboration with Centro Latinoamericano. So basically what we're wanting to do is address the issue of air pollution in that particular area. It's historically been known to have high air toxics in the air, as well as because of the geography and due to the valley nature of that area, air collects and becomes stagnant as well as accumulates, not only from the industries in the area but also from air that's coming that are wind-borne or toxic origins from metropolitan areas. By bringing the human rights framework into the picture through the environmental justice lens, it provides a space to address concerns, to voice opinions, to empower the community. And that is one of the factors and essential elements towards contributing to the success of this project. And for example, we had a community forum where the residents and community leaders and officials were able to gather and express opinions and concerns regarding air pollution in West Eugene. And out of that, we're hoping to establish a community advisory committee. And without the human rights and the environmental justice perspective, that space would probably not have been as effective.
If I were in a classroom with a group of high schoolers and was trying to wake them up to the world in a way, I would want them to start seeing all the discrimination that is around them. Maybe not necessarily within their high school classroom, but the fact that we still use a system close to slavery to get this country going. The agricultural industry and the farm workers, the low wages that they get paid. Maybe their local county jail is now being used as a mini deportation center. Racial profiling the police might do, even to them actually, because even more so because they're youth. Well, what I've been seeing here in Oregon is it's almost like this fear that a lot of our immigrant communities have, especially with being denied, basic services such as being able to drive legally, so the driver's licenses, and also what happened in a couple of our communities up in northern Oregon, so trying to give higher penalties to employers of undocumented people, and all these different measures that they wanted to pass, so to essentially kick out folks from their home. It's like this atmosphere of fear that people don't feel like they can be themselves. Like, I know somebody told me a story of going to the grocery store and talking in Spanish, like one of their family members, and having somebody else coming up to them and telling them that, the typical, this is America, speak English, and feeling like you can't even speak your own language, like you have to be afraid of going out because you don't have a driver's license, things like that, is what I see as human rights violations. You just like the ability to feel like you're at home.
Well, at Mind Freedom International, human rights has become the centerpiece, the framework that we can approach a lot of problems in mental health. People who've been through the mental health system are among the most marginalized of all populations. In a lot of studies, people diagnosed with psychiatric disabilities are often some of the poorest people. Their lifespans in the public mental health system are 25 years less than the average person. They can experience things like involuntary electroshock. We had a campaign last year about a guy, Ray Sanford, that was actually getting court-ordered involuntary electroshock on an outpatient basis. They woke him up every Wednesday and brought him to a forced electroshock, running electricity through his head, on a weekly, ongoing basis. That's how bad it can get, right? Even right here in the USA. So you have this huge range of problems. In fact, I ask audiences that I speak with, I say, you've heard of racism, sexism, maybe even ableism or ageism. Have you heard of saneism? And a lot of people have never even heard of it, where we think of people with severe mental and emotional problems as if they're even not really human, that they're genetically and chemically different from us, that we can't understand them, that they're dangerous. So there's such a huge array of problems that the human rights framework has really helped us connect with people and society. The big breakthrough this past few years is that the United Nations passed a new treaty. They call it a convention. It's a binding treaty called the UN Convention on the Rights of People with Disabilities, the CRPD. And our team in the UN actually was part of crafting this treaty, along with a number of other mental health consumers, psychiatric survivors, and hundreds of people from the cross-disability movement. This has given us a tool to bring up issues such as forced treatment and guardianship, and that our disability alone should not be enough. Our disability should not be a reason to take away our rights. We had some breakthroughs. One thing is the City of Eugene City Council unanimously adopted our resolution. And our resolution says that choice in mental health care is a human right, that there ought to be more choices available to citizens other than just the pharmaceutical approach.
Well, the organization that I've been involved with for a long time is Community Alliance of Lane County, CALC, and CALC tackles a whole range of human rights issues. The part of that work that I particularly do is work with Springfield Alliance for Equality and Respect, and as part of that I coordinate a wonderful group in Springfield called the Springfield Shelter Rights Alliance, and you'll hear the word rights right in the name of the group, and that was not the least bit accidental. It's because that's a point of agreement among everybody in the group that shelter is a human right. It may not be a human right which is realized for people, but it is their right. And it's their right because they're human beings that were born on the planet. And it's a different thing to know that your rights are not being realized, but that you have them. That has a lot to say about human dignity and about people's sense of who they are. And so we think it's very important to have that as the starting point. And then, of course, we try to do some very practical work to make the situation better for people who are homeless or people who are at risk of homelessness. Human rights are about human dignity, and it's about the fact that in my worldview is we're a family. We're all of us as human beings a family. And I'm personally offended and angry when other people don't have the basic things that they ought to have, that we all ought to be able to take for granted just because we're people on the planet. And I want that, I want those human rights, and I want that respect, and I want that dignity for everyone else that's alive.
And I should let you know that the work that you all are doing here, I'll discuss this a little bit more later on, but the work that you're doing here is becoming nationally and internationally recognized, and Eugene's really becoming a model for how local community can implement human rights really where the rubber meets the road.